In a shocking decision, the Speaker has refused to grant an emergency debate on the tragic issue of drug overdose deaths and drug decriminalization in British Columbia.
Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. In today's top stories, we've got hard candy, a lot of hard candy. This is David Eby's hard candy project that he put into place here, and it is going horribly wrong. So David Eby had this 3-year program he's put out. We're into the first year of it, and it's already resulted in numerous people per day perishing from this. We all know what kind of hard candy I'm talking about. It's all the old nose flower. This ain't the green Luigi. This is the Super Mario, if you know what I mean. First up, we got a couple clips here from the House of Commons regarding this, and then we'll jump over into a press conference from Andrew Scheer where they absolutely blast the Liberals for just their inability to act and solve the problem here. You see, David Eby has flip-flopped on his policies, asking for the hard candy to be removed off the streets now, and the Liberals are like, but it's destroying the country. That's what we like to do around here. So
crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. That's what we have after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government. The extremist policies of this Prime Minister have forced parents in British Columbia to protect their kids from used needles at the playground. Open in-your-face drug use in Tim Hortons, on the SkyTrain, even in our hospitals. The Prime Minister's negligence is killing our citizens. When will he admit that his radical decriminalization experiment has failed and end it?
This would be common sense.
Mental health and addictions.
Mr. Speaker, too many Canadians are dying every day from an ever-changing illegal toxic drug supply. The opposition leader and members of the Conservative Party are a big talk about investing in treatment, but Conservatives cut 2/3 of the drug treatment fund when they were last in government. Shameful. Let's talk about what saves lives, Mr. Speaker. Safe consumption sites, accessible social and healthcare services, prevention, treatment, and harm reduction. They have no plan, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we continue to work to save lives.
That's one of the grumpiest looking people I've ever seen.
The honourable member from South Surrey, White Rock.
Well, let's talk through a clear lens, Mr. Speaker. 40,000. That is the number of Canadians that have died from drug overdoses since 2015. Entirely preventable. Last year, BC set a record with over 2,500, and they want to talk about saving lives and compassion. Premier Eby and this Prime Minister have failed British Columbians, and now he's taking his deadly experiment to Toronto. Until this extremist drug policy is dismantled, people will keep dying. Will he prioritize recovery and stop killing Canadians with his radical ideology?
Mr. Speaker, the opposition don't want to talk about the plans or the tools that are needed to save lives because they don't have a plan. All they offer Canadians are slogans and fear. Slogans are not an evidence-based strategy, Mr. Speaker. They are just words. We have a full suite of measures that address this crisis because it's a public health crisis, Mr. Speaker. It is not a criminal issue. We continue to work with BC on the exemption that they requested with a clear lens of public health and public safety.
Good job. There's needles in playgrounds.
Mr. Speaker, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder. After 9 years of the Prime Minister's extremist policies, public drug use has become the norm. The Prime Minister has made it legal in British Columbia to smoke meth on the beach beside a family or smoke crack in a hospital beside healthcare workers. In fact, a nurse in British Columbia stopped breastfeeding her twin girls early at 13 months because being exposed to illicit drugs in the hallway. When will the NDP Liberals realize that time is up and end the decriminalization today?
Mr. Speaker, every life lost in the illegal toxic drug supply, every overdose, every family that loses a loved one is a tragedy. Right. Mr. Speaker, our focus, working with the BC government on their exemption request, is about saving lives, about providing health care. Harm reduction is health care, Mr. Speaker. They continue to divide.
She's getting heckled hard there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. Drug deaths are up 380% in BC since 2015 when they took office. So the NDP Liberal Coalition unleashed a horrific experiment in British Columbia, and now the NDP Premier is pleading with the Prime Minister to fix this disaster. But what we're learning Minister has decided they're going to double down and they want to expand this failed project into Toronto. After 9 years, this NDP Liberal government's drug policy is failing Canadians, and the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Instead of expanding this, will they do the right thing and just end this policy today?
You would think so, but they're actually not for the people of Canada.
Around the world, opioid deaths are taking so many lives. The way we can rise and meet that moment is with truth and evidence, and not inflaming through spreading false information this situation.
Last week, a drug-addled man lit fires and consumed drugs in front of traumatized kids at the Prince George Aquatic Centre. The RCMP were called numerous times, but their hands are tied because of their insane drug policies.
This is just like, what's happening to Canada?
Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, I would ask clearly, what evidence are they basing their decisions on? And the answer to that question, everywhere.
He's gonna pop a gasket here, man. Just wait for it.
The Honourable Minister
He's gonna go berserk.
has 25 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, replacing science with slogans, replacing research and evidence with talking points will not fix this problem, Mr. Speaker. There is not a person in this House who is not ripped apart when we watch somebody lose a loved one to this crisis. But to meet it with partisanship, to meet it with pretend solutions,
here it comes.
to do things that have failed in other jurisdictions is a disgrace to those who have lost family members, Mr. Speaker.
Mark doesn't
The
care
Honourable
at all.
Member from Cumberland Colchester.
A leaked memo in BC is now instructing nurses to teach patients how to inject illegal drugs into their intravenous.
Jeez.
Will the Prime Minister end his deadly drug decriminalization experiment today?
Speaker, on this side of the House, we are committed to saving lives and making sure people who use drugs don't die alone. We moved forward with the decriminalization pilot project at BC's request and have always maintained it would be rigorously monitored and adjusted as needed. Every tool, every resource to save lives is what we are committed to.
There's nothing safe about their safe supply. It's not safe for anyone. Even myself, I went and sat across the street from where I live here on a tree in the woods, and there was a needle on the ground. Like, it's disgusting, deplorable. Before we get into the press conference with Andrew Scheer, I just want to tell a quick story here. So I've got a friend who works in a local government in a town around here, and she was telling me that just today, a bus driver had to pull the bus over and park the bus and go to the hospital because someone was enjoying some hard candy in their vape. So typically that's what they do. They'll put it in a vape because vaping is a lot more publicly accepted. And they did this in the back of the bus, and the air intake pulled up the hard candy smell. It went over to the bus driver, and then the bus driver, he was kind of going lights out. He had to pull over. They had to take him to the hospital. In what world is this acceptable where you have a bus driver having to get off the bus because the people in the back are doing stuff like this? Like, everyone on the bus is affected. It's ridiculous. Next up's a few words from Andrew Scheer.
In a shocking decision, the Speaker has refused to grant an emergency debate on the tragic issue of drug overdose deaths and drug decriminalization in British Columbia. Remember, it was the NDP government of British Columbia who asked Justin Trudeau to decriminalize the use of dangerous drugs in public places all over the province. As a result, the number of overdose deaths has skyrocketed, and people no longer feel safe in their communities. We've heard just tragic reports of things like nurses having to forego breastfeeding their children because they're worried about the exposure that they face to from drug fumes in hospitals. The Minister of Mental Health and Addictions today refused to take immediate action, and as a result, Conservatives are calling on the government to hold an emergency take-note debate so that Minister Sachs can be held accountable for her decision today. Worse than refusing to take immediate action, the government has refused to rule out expanding this dangerous and extreme pilot project to other communities, most notably in Toronto. So they're refusing to rule out expanding this deadly policy to other communities in Canada. And that is why Conservatives believe that the Trudeau government needs to be held accountable to parliamentarians and are calling on the government to grant this emergency take note debate immediately so that Canadians can hold this government accountable.
There you have it. The Conservatives standing up for Canadians once again, and the Trudeau Liberals, they don't care about Canada or Canadians at all. All they care about is taking our money. Next up, I want to show some examples here of what happens when a country goes too woke, or in this case, a city goes too woke. We've got downtown San Francisco. I've mentioned this on the channel here before. It's so ridiculous, their policies. They don't arrest people if they steal stuff. There's a certain price value. I can't remember what it is, but you can go in and basically steal up to a certain price value and you won't get arrested. It's stupid. And so for this reason, people initially were trying to lock up their businesses, but now people have just moved out. It's just a ghost town now. Every store is closed in downtown San Francisco. Like unreal. Gap used to be here. AT&T closed in August 2023. More closed retail stores next to Macy's. Old Navy closed in July 2023. Store's been there since the 1990s. H&M closed. Uniqlo was here. GameStop, it's all gone. Whoever owns those buildings must be pissed. The mall took off their sign. That is absolutely wild. This is what happens when you have too much wokeness going on. You end up with this, just a city falling apart. Something else you guys got to check out. Mark Garrettson, he does not like being challenged. Check this out.
If I understood that member correctly, Mr. Speaker, he just asked and questioned whether I was towing a Liberal Party line or a Communist Party of China line. My response to that member is, let's go outside and say it to me in public where you do not have the parliamentary privilege that you have in this room.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, what is that? Trying to be some sort of thug in the House of Commons? It's ridiculous. So jumping over to my group here, let's check out a few memes. We've got Chrystia Freeland asked, about to answer a question, yeah. When wokeness went too far, identify as a Prime Minister of Canada, yeah. That face you make when you're trying to blow wind out your... New Gender says you can identify as seasons. Me identifying as deer season. I loved all my students at West Point Grey. I had a favorite, but the NDA won't let me talk about that. So we got some scribbles, some more scribbles, and that's how budgets balance themselves. Yeah. The day that Justin Trudeau leaves office should be declared as a national holiday. I was thinking about that. You know, when he's finally out of there, there's going to be the biggest party in Canada ever. Just think about this. It's going to be absolute people on the streets. It's going to be a good time. Our problems still won't be solved, but it will be a day to remember. So I think it should be. We should have that as a national holiday. I think we should put in a vote to rename the Montreal Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport to something else. The Freedom Airport. I don't care what it is. It could be the Flying Monkey Airport. It's time to get the name of Trudeau off of everything and anything. That's where we wrap up today's episode. If you didn't see the previous episode, check that out as Pierre Poilievre absolutely demolishes the Liberals in the House of Commons there. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. Be sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications. We'll keep fighting for freedom. I'll see you guys on the next one.